I can see that Steve was anxious to bring up the 14-team playoff because he really wants to talk about this. But
oh,
no, I actually want to bring it up because I think when you look at it, once you get past the surface of, well, a 14-team playoff instead of 12, that we're letting in 2 other teams. But to me, it's not about that, even though Washington and Tennessee are going to make the playoff instead of not making the playoff, or fill in the blank of your marginal 9-3 teams in the big conferences that are going to make the playoff. It's more about maybe this SEC and Big Ten influence saying the Big 12 champion shouldn't get a bye like we do, and the ACC champ shouldn't get a bye. We'll get 2 byes, and that's going to be basically reserved for the Big Ten and the SEC champions. That's what it's about.
wow. Yeah, I suppose that could be. I mean, it's very predatory the way the whole thing is going down, it seems like, and the SEC and the Big Ten feel like they're like 2 steps away from saying, okay, we're just going to take our ball and go play with ourselves, and the heck with you other people, you unwashed other people whose games no one watches on television. So that's why you're not aligned with us. But I don't know. On one hand, you say they're killing it. On the other hand, you're saying, hey, I'm all for it. Let's go to an NFL style playoff. And 14, man, that just I don't know. I've never thought the number 13 or 14 team was a legitimate national championship team in college football, but who knows? Maybe 8-4 is a good record. I don't know, 9-3, whatever. So, 8-4, but they had 3 quad 1 wins. So it's like, okay, all right, sure. But they were 5-3 in the SEC East. It's like, come on, what do you people want? So I don't know. I'm ambivalent about the whole thing. They're going to do whatever they want to do, and I don't know. I don't know who's driving this train. I really don't. You just shake your head every day. There's a new development. You shake your head, and you're just saying this is counter to anything that makes common sense. But let's give it a whirl.
Well, and it reminds me of when we talked with new OSU AD, incoming AD Ross Bjork, and he talked about the next few years, the tipping point of college sports. And when I asked him, are you looking forward to it? He said, I'm just looking forward to it being settled and having the answer and knowing where we can go and move from here. And so, yeah, the 14-team thing to me, I'm with you, Mark. This to me felt like you're rewarding the top 2 teams more. It's like you're trying to make the regular season better by creating a serious reward for just 2 teams rather than a serious reward for 4 teams. So, like, I don't really see much of an issue with it. It just creates a couple more games and a couple more TV slots. So they probably view it as, it's harmless. What's 2 more games, and plus it's going to make more money. So there's what's the harm? And it's very limited harm, of course. So there is that. I hadn't put the math together like you, though, where it's like, well, the Big Ten and the SEC get the first 2, and then you go from there. But with the teams that they have, like, it will be interesting also because whenever if like the Big 12 or the ACC, when they have like the number 1 team, the committee will be like, yeah, but you went through the ACC and the Big 12. You didn't go through the Big 10.
The real gauntlet.
Exactly. Yeah. So 0 losses in the ACC is like 1 loss in the big, or whatever. And so, yeah, you can wash it away and justify whatever you want in order to get those 2. But also the ACC and the Big 12, they just got to be happy to be invited. Just be happy that you're at the dance, because that's the way things are right now. And better to be at the dance than at home on a Friday night watching wrestling.
Yeah. I assume I like it the way it is, that theoretically all 4 of the Power 4 champions, 4 years out of 5 or 8 years out of 10, whatever, 9 years out of 10, they're going to get slotted 1, 2, 3, 4. I like that because it creates in that championship weekend, the first weekend in December, some real urgency. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just can't sleepwalk through that game just because you're Georgia and you're a 17-point favorite. You just can't show up and assume. You have to actually go out and win the game to get that bye, to get that spot. And so I kind of like it the way it is because it creates 4 must-watch, must-win games over that weekend. I don't know how it's set up this coming year. I think it's still premature to say how it's going to be slotted, but I would have to think that one of those Power Fours is going to get moved to Friday night, which has always been the Pac-12 night. And that way it won't be SEC and it won't be Big Ten. So I would assume Big 12 or ACC are going to have to move to Friday night because you would not, as a programmer, want one of those 2 games up against another play-in game of that caliber. I think ACC or Big 12 are going to be coaxed to move their game. Maybe they rotate it, and one of them always moves to Friday night, and the other one's at noon on Saturday, and then you build up to SEC and then Big 10 at night. That's what makes sense to me. Is you'd stack it so you have 4 different TV slots for those play-in games. I call them play-in games, but
No, I do prefer the idea of automatic qualifiers being the conference champs. If you get 4, then 4 buys is just but again, you're talking about you might give a 9-4 Wake Forest a buy over an 11-1 Ohio State or an 11-1 Michigan, so you're going to have some uproar there. And the Big Ten and the SEC aren't going to wield their power just for some automatic qualifiers. They're doing it so that they can have more power on putting their own product in there. But yeah, even if you have fewer automatic qualifiers or there isn't a play-in in terms of the conference championship game, if you do win your conference and you're 10-3 or whatever, you're going to make the playoffs. So, just looking at last year's rankings, the first 4-loss team after conference championship weekend was number 19, Oregon State. Everybody else is 0, 1, 2, or 3 losses. And there are going to be 3 teams with 3 losses in the 12-team playoff at points as well. So, I don't think this dilutes it too much. It just gives the 3 and 4 seed somebody to beat in the first round.
Steve's thinking like a television programmer. I guess based on my background, I should be thinking that direction, but he's being more practical. And that's the real reason. I was thinking more from the standpoint of I like the 4 qualifiers being the 4 conference champions because I think there's a positive tension between the bucket of you earn it, you deserve it, you play in a conference versus this, we just select the best. I don't care who they are. This subjective, we just take them. We're going to take all these SEC and Big Ten teams. And it provides tension that you have components of both. You've got a committee that's going to fill out all these at-large spots that's going to be loaded with SEC and Big Ten teams, but you're honoring the conference championships. So that's a positive tension to me between the 2 concepts and the 2 approaches. Although, again, I think Steve nailed it with the practical aspect of it for the television audiences and why it's going to work better that way.
It's all a television show, as we've come back to a lot of times.
I'll give 1 year, for example, because I'm going to run this down, this 14-team playoff over the course of what we would have seen from 2014 on, because we've got college football playoff rankings during that time. And I'm just throwing out 1 year. Really, every year is a log jam of decisions that have to be made. And again, I think the 3 of us agree these teams aren't going to play for a national champion. They're not going to be involved 3 weekends later playing for a national championship. But just take 2023 for an example. Yes, they're going to be 9-3 teams qualify for the playoff. There's only going to be 1 based on the college football playoff rankings, and that would be LSU at 13. But Louisville, Iowa, 10-3 out. Arizona, Notre Dame, somebody else that I can't decipher here. North Carolina State, 9-3 out. Every year you're going to have like 4, 5, 6 teams at 9-3, and only like 1, 2 maybe at the most can make it. And what I also think is an interesting component is if you go year to year, that 10-2 team that loses a conference championship game, almost 80% of the time, basically, they drop from being inside the 12 to outside the 12. And what is the committee going to, how are they going to view that and approach that when it means something?
Well, there's that danger, but it's also an opportunity for somebody. So we've seen examples with the 14 playoff of the conference championship hurting you and helping you. So I won't get hung up on that, but it is, if you are a team with 2 losses, like it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna make James Franklin super upset if he's at 10-2 and they missed the Big Ten championship game because there are 2 teams ahead of them. That just means 2 losses, we're in. 3 losses, we might not be. So we're good at 2. We're gonna, you know what? We've been dealt a 16. We're gonna stick.
And then the other tip off to this, when I said off the top that the first thing that my mind went to was this isn't about numbers 13 and 14. This is about creating Big Ten and SEC buys exclusively, was what Tony Petiti said last week to ESPN. That seemed to be the tip off to me. Was he made 2 statements. He said, number one, we want more teams in the playoffs in the Big Ten. We want to position ourselves to have more teams in the playoffs. So then bingo, a couple of days later, it's reported that the SEC and the Big Ten are pushing for 4 automatic spots. And then the other component, he says, is that, oh, we want more meaningful games in November. Well, the first thing I thought of was you're stating you want more teams in the playoffs, but you want more meaningful games in November, which means more good teams are playing each other in November. Those are going to be counterproductive based on the way teams are selected now. So then it made sense that a couple of days later, oh yeah, 4 automatic qualifiers out of the Big Ten. That's what you're pushing for. That's going to ensure that these games in November, when we've got USC playing Penn State, Ohio State's playing Oregon, and all these games, aren't going to hurt us because we've protected 4 spots. So we get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Big Ten the Big Ten standings the last couple of years. The number 4 team in the Big Ten this year would have been like Iowa. The number 4 Big Ten team in 2022 was Purdue. So you've got Purdue after the Big Ten championship game with a record of 8-5, I believe, something like that, making the playoffs as one of those 4 automatic Big Ten. And now, granted, you are adding 4 new programs, so the talent is going to be higher, but so maybe it works out. But you know, at 14 with 8 spots taken up by the Big Ten and SEC, is it terrible? I mean, is 6 enough for the Big 12 and the ACC and a group of 5? I mean, it's 3, 2, and 1 for those guys. Is that shortchanging them a little bit? Maybe not. I don't know, because and what are they going to want when the ACC breaks down and Florida State is in the Big Ten and Notre Dame is in the Big Ten, and you know we just continue to grow and grow and grow. But I don't know. Is 4-4 for the Big Ten and the SEC, is that too much of a spot grab there, Steve?
Man, that is a tough one. Because some years you could justify it, and as you mentioned with the Purdue year, you can't. I mean, they're not one of the top 15 or 20 teams in the country. They just happen to be in a setup that, I mean, there were 2 better Big Ten teams that didn't get to play in the championship game because of some archaic geographic setup. SEC still has it, as far as I know. I don't know if they're going to one division in the top 2. I honestly haven't researched that, but you know, which would make sense. That would bring them into alignment with all the other leagues now that are doing it that way. But so yeah, I'm, you know, again, Ohio State's well positioned for them to be in it most every year, and you know, whatever else happens after that, you know, I'm whatever on the whole thing. I guess I want to see a few years and see in in practice what it looks like before I say, oh, this isn't right or this is good or, whatever.
I'm just looking at the last 2 years, including looking at the final rankings. So these aren't totally accurate, but the final rankings of all of the teams that will be in the Big Ten in the next year. And so last year, the number 12 team, which was Penn State, would not have made the playoffs if you're talking 4 automatic qualifiers because of the Oregon and the Washington situation, and Michigan and Ohio State being the top 4 Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
And also the year before that, I think USC would have missed it as the number 12 team as well, because there are 4 Big Ten teams ahead of them in Washington, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. So maybe there's something to that.
But that's with the bowl game loss.
Yeah,
Right?
no, that's what I'm saying. These are the final rankings. So I'd have to go back and just, I could actually do it right now and just look at the Week 15 rankings.
They would have been there. Penn State was safely in, and so was USC. USC was 11-1 before. Well, the conference.
Here's after the conference championships in 2022. You have Michigan, you have Ohio State, you have USC as the 3rd Big Ten team, and then Penn State would have been the 4th. Washington at 12 would have been left out in 2022. And then last year, after the conference championship game, it would have been Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, and Oregon, the top 8, and Penn State at 10 would have been left out in this scenario. And leaving out the number 10 team seems pretty extreme.
How does Penn State get left out if there's only one group of 5?
Well, if we're talking, they may not. If you're going to have 5, like, are we? When they say at least 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten, can they expand it to like 5? Could be like
5 would be an at large, yeah.
Right. So like I'm just saying.
I got you. You're saying that 4 and no more, 4 guaranteed, but no more. Okay.
Right. So,
I'm thinking of it at least 4.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good quality. We've got to decide on that. But yeah, I could see why as I look at it. 4 doesn't seem to be outrageous, especially when you're just coming off of a year where after the conference championship game, 4 of the top 8 are your future schools or present schools, and 5 of the top 10 are your future or present schools.
I think it's more likely they're going to cannibalize each other. I mean, when you really get right down to it, I mean, each of these teams is going to play 9 conference games this coming year, and somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. So a very good team's going to be 6-3 in the conference, 9-3 at best. I mean, I don't know. It's not looking like, to me, it's a numbers situation. When you look at Michigan's schedule this year, whatever their over under is of like 9.5. I mean, you look at the players they have coming back, the coaching staff, and that schedule. There's no way they win 10 games. I can't imagine it. So for us to sit here and project that there's going to be, a 13-0 Big Ten team, a 12-1 Big Ten team, an 11-1 Big Ten team, and a 10-2 Big Ten team, and then maybe another 10-2 or a 9-3. I don't think that's realistic. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose, and, upsets and whatever. I mean, in these mega conferences, 8-4 is going to be a great record. It really will be. 9-3 is going to be a phenomenal record in these mega conferences where the best of the best are playing each other on a more regular basis than anything we've ever seen in the past. I think, especially when you go out of conference like Michigan is and playing Texas. This year, I mean, they have no chance to win that game, in my opinion. Even though it's at Michigan, they have no chance. So I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to whether that next level of Wisconsin, Iowa, and those teams are good enough to pull off some upsets on a fairly regular basis to keep those records down. But and I don't want to blow 2023 out of proportion, because I do think it was a bit of an outlier. But even if those teams from the West Coast were playing in the Big Ten, look at Penn State. Okay, you would think at 10-2, you tack on another tough game onto their schedule, they may lose that game and they get knocked out of the playoff. However, the way they're approaching it, it appears though they're trading in Ohio State or Michigan for somebody else. So maybe they just trade losses and they're still 10-2 and they're still in. You can tack another loss on Ohio State. You can tack another loss on Michigan, Washington, Oregon. They're still all making the playoff.
As they should.
Could be.